Welcome back to the channel, Basketball Aficionados, and thank you for tuning into what might just be the most consequential and heavily anticipated Gilas Pilipinas update of the year. We are standing at the precipice of a massive paradigm shift in Philippine basketball, and today we are unpacking a monumental doubleheader of breaking news that is actively sending absolute shockwaves through the local and international basketball communities. This development is not just a minor roster tweak. It is a fundamental altering of the landscape of FIBA World Cup 2027 Asian qualifiers. We are talking about an unprecedented infusion of firepower, size, and tactical versatility into the Gilas Pilipinas arsenal. The headlines are blazing across every sports platform, and the message is undeniably clear. Benny Boatwright is officially in the building, assimilating into the Gilas practice pool, and Sotto is preparing to unleash an immediate, unmitigated force against our formidable Oceania rivals, the New Zealand Tall Blacks and the Australian Boomers. If you thought the recent Window 2 qualifiers were intense, I need you to strap in, because the absolute blueprint for Philippine basketball is being completely redrawn right before our very eyes. To truly understand the magnitude of this news, we have to rewind and set the stage. The recently concluded second window of the FIBA World Cup Asian qualifiers in late February 2026 was a brutal, physical, and emotionally taxing reality check for the national squad. Playing on our home floor at the SM Mall of Asia Arena, the atmosphere was electric. The stakes were sky high, but the results left a bitter taste in the mouths of millions of fans. We absorbed our first defeat of the qualifiers in a heartbreaking, grinded-out 69-66 loss to New Zealand. It was a game decided in the absolute dying seconds, where a potential game-tying three-pointer by Dwight Ramos hit the backboard and the rim, but just would not fall as the final buzzer sounded. We saw a valiant effort, a massive defensive struggle, where we rallied back from an early deficit to tie the game at 37-all by halftime, only to be out-muscled and out-executed down the final stretch of the fourth quarter. And then, just days later, we faced the absolute juggernaut of the region, the Australian Boomers, and suffer a sobering 93-66 defeat. The glaring, unignorable storyline throughout both of those grueling matchups was the massive void in the paint. We fought with the heart of champions. A.J. Edu was an absolute revelation on the boards, pulling down 11 rebounds against the Tall Blacks and showcasing his incredible athleticism and defensive instincts. Quentin Miller-Brown, stepping up incredibly in his early days with the national team, showed flashes of brilliance and high basketball IQ. June Fajardo brought his veteran presence, and our guards, from C.J. Perez to returning Juan Gomez de Leano, poured their hearts out on the floor. But the reality of international basketball, especially when you're going up against the giants of Oceania, is that heart and hustle can only take you so far when you are structurally undersized. New Zealand's coach, Judd Flavel, admitted it openly in the post-game press conference. He explicitly stated that they knew the Philippines was missing a massive piece of the puzzle, and that New Zealand deliberately capitalized on that absence to dominate the offensive glass, pulling down 15 crucial offensive rebounds that ultimately decided the game. That missing piece, that massive void, was none other than the 7'3" prodigy Sotto. Sotto had to beg off from the second window as he diligently focused on strengthening his knees following a recovery from a torn ACL, ensuring he is perfectly conditioned for his return to the Japan B-League and the long-term future of his career. But the news breaking right now changes the entire narrative moving forward. The word on the street, the buzzing inside the training facilities, and the ultimate takeaway from this latest development is that Sotto's return is imminent, and his presence is going to be an immediate, unstoppable force against both New Zealand and Australia in the upcoming crucial rematches. We are not just talking about a player coming back. We are talking about a gravitational force stepping onto the hardwood, a player whose mere presence completely alters the geometry of the basketball court, forces opposing coaches to tear up their defensive scouting reports, and elevates every single player wearing the Philippine jersey. And if the impending return of a fully healthy, highly motivated Sotto was not enough to send your excitement levels through the roof, we have the second massive piece of this breaking news. Benny Boatwright, the incredible offensive phenom, the stretch 4, stretch 5 nightmare matchup, who took the Philippine Basketball Association by storm with the San Miguel Beermen, has officially joined the Gilas Pilipinas practice sessions. This is not a drill. While his naturalization papers are still being meticulously processed through the Philippine Congress, Boatwright is not sitting idly by in a hotel room. He is on the floor. He is in the gym. He is actively observing, participating, and immersing himself in the highly complex, highly demanding triangle offensive system orchestrated by the legendary coach Tim Cone. This shows a level of dedication and foresight that is exactly what the national program needs. By the time the ink dries on his Philippine passport, Benny Boatwright will not just be a hired gun. He will be a fully integrated, system-fluent weapon ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. The combination of these two factors, Boatwright acclimating to the Gilas culture and playbook, and Kai Sotto preparing to enforce his will against the Oceania powerhouses, create a perfect storm of optimism for Gilas Pilipinas. It signals a shift from simply surviving the Asian qualifiers to actively looking to dominate them. It means that when July rolls around for the third and final window of the first round, where we will have to face New Zealand and Australia in hostile, away game territory, we will not be marching in as underdogs hoping for a miracle. We will be marching in with arguably the most potent, most towering, and most offensively gifted front line in the entire history of Philippine basketball. The stakes have never been higher. The road to the 2027 FIBA World Cup is paved with massive obstacles. But as we dive deep into the specific implications of Boatwright's practice participation and Sotto's imminent return, you will quickly see why the rest of Group A, and indeed the rest of Asia, should be put on absolute high alert. Let us transition into the core of today's deep dive, and we have to start by mathematically and tactically breaking down the Benny Boatwright equation. To understand why his presence in the Gilas practice facility is such a monumental development, we have to look at his specific skill set and how it acts as the ultimate skeleton key for Coach Tim Cone's offensive philosophy. Benny Boatwright is not your traditional, back-to-the-basket bruising import. Standing a legitimate 6'10", he possesses the silky smooth shooting stroke of a two-guard. During his legendary stint in the PBA, we saw him effortlessly pull up from 30 feet, drain, catch, and shoot three-pointers in transition, and execute highly technical pick-and-pop actions with terrifying efficiency. He is the modern blueprint of a stretch big man. Why is this so critical for Gilas Pilipinas? Historically, Philippine national teams have relied heavily on naturalized players who are primary ball handlers or post-up dominators, players who need the ball in their hands to be effective, while players like Justin Brownlee have been nothing short of miraculous for us, securing historic Asian Games gold medals and hitting legendary clutch shots. The international game is rapidly evolving. When you face teams like Australia, whose defensive rotations are incredibly sharp and whose perimeter defenders are long and physical, you need front-court players who can spread the floor and punish them from the outside. Benny Boatwright does exactly that. By simply standing on perimeter, his shooting gravity pulls the opposing team's rim protector completely out of the paint. This opens up massive, gaping driving lanes for our dynamic guards like Dwight Ramos, Chris Newsom, and CJ Perez. Furthermore, Boatwright is currently soaking in the intricacies of the triangle offense. The triangle is predicated on spacing, ball movement, reading the defense, and passing angles. It requires high basketball IQ and the ability to make split-second decisions. By attending practices right now, side by side with returning players like Jamie Malonzo and Juan Gomez de Leano, Boatwright is building essential chemistry. He is learning where Dwight Ramos likes to catch the ball on the weak side. He is understanding the timing of Jumar Fajardo's post seals. He is figuring out the defensive rotations required by Coach Cone. This proactive approach completely eliminates the steep learning curve that usually plagues newly naturalized players who are flown in just weeks before a major tournament. When Boatwright becomes officially eligible, potentially joining the pool alongside an equally imposing Mauro Juve, Gilas will possess an unprecedented luxury of choosing the perfect naturalized player tailored to match up against specific opponents. But let us pivot to the second and arguably even more game-changing aspect of our breaking news. The immediate force that is Kai Sotto. The prompt for today's news highlights that Kai Sotto will be an immediate force against New Zealand and Australia, and history tells us exactly why this is a terrifying prospect for the Tall Blacks and the Boomers. We do not have to guess what Kai Sotto looks like against New Zealand. We simply have to look back at the historic November 2024 FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers matchup. In that game, Playing in front of a raucous Manila crowd, Gilas Pilipinas pulled off a stunning 93-89 upset over New Zealand, their first ever victory over the Tall Blacks in a major FIBA competition. And who was the absolute central architect of that victory? It was the 2.21-meter phenomenon, Sotto. In that 2024 masterclass, Sotto did not just play well. He completely dictated the terms of engagement. He posted an eye-watering stat line of 19 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, to go along with steals and block shots. The New Zealand frontcourt simply had no answer for him when they tried to play him one-on-one. He used his elite footwork, soft touch, and towering height to drop jump hooks right over their outstretched arms. When they inevitably sent double teams to try and disrupt his rhythm, Sotto showcased his highly underrated playmaking ability, passing out the post to find wide-open shooters on perimeter, tallying an incredible 7 assists for a center. He was the ultimate hub of the offense and the absolute anchor of the defense. Now, juxtapose that dominant 2024 performance with a devastating 69-66 loss to New Zealand just a few days ago in February 2026. Without Sotto to anchor the middle, the entire dynamic of the Gilas defense had to shift. A.J. Edu and Quinton Milora-Brown played their hearts out, absolutely battling in the trenches. Edu had 3 massive blocks, and QMB showed his willingness to do the dirty work. But you simply cannot teach 7'3". You cannot replicate the absolute deterrence that Sotto provides just by standing near the basket. Without him, the New Zealand guards were emboldened to attack the rim with much more aggression, and their bigs, led by Sam Menenga, who grabbed 14 rebounds, were able to feast on the offensive glass, generating those critical second chance points that ultimately won them the game. The promise of Sotto being an immediate force in the upcoming July windows against these exact same teams is the ultimate tactical trump card for Coach Tim Cone. Imagine the absolute nightmare scenario for the Australian and New Zealand scouting departments. They now have to prepare for a Gilas Pilipinas team that will not only feature the relentless energy of A.J. Edu, who went on record just today stating how incredibly excited he is to reunite with his former youth team partner in Sotto, but also the veteran savvy of June Mar-Fajardo, the high motor rebounding of Quinton Milora-Brown, and the towering, multifaceted offensive arsenal of Sotto. When you put Sotto back on the floor, the offensive rebounding advantage that New Zealand enjoyed completely evaporates. The driving lanes that the Australian guards exploited are suddenly barricaded by a 7'3" rim protector who is highly motivated to prove he is fully healthy and back to his dominant self following his ACL recovery. Furthermore, Sotto's return allows every other player on the Gilas roster to slot back into their natural, optimal roles. A.J. Edu no longer has to carry the absolute brunt of the interior defense against players significantly heavier than him. He can roam as a free safety, blocking shots from the weak side. Dwight Ramos does not have to constantly crash the boards to help the bigs. He can leak out in transition to score easy fast break points. The domino effect of having a truly elite, world-class center on the floor impacts every single possession, both offensively and defensively. It brings a level of structural stability to the team that turns them from a plucky underdog into a genuine regional powerhouse capable of standing toe-to-toe with the world's best. As we begin to wrap up this incredibly deep dive into the state of Gilas Pilipinas, we have to look at the broader, long-term implications of everything we have discussed today. We are looking at a national program that is refusing to accept the status quo. The heartbreaking losses to New Zealand and Australia in the recent second window could have easily demoralized the team. It could have led to finger-pointing, frustration, and a loss of momentum. Instead, it has acted as the ultimate catalyst for evolution. The pain of those defeats has only clarified exactly what needs to be done to bridge the gap between the Philippines and the elite tier of global basketball. The proactive integration of Benny Boatwright into the Gilas practice environment is a masterstroke of management by the Samahang basketball in Pilipinas and Coach Tim Cone. It shows that we are no longer just reacting to circumstances. We are actively building, preparing, and future-proofing our roster. Whenever his naturalization process crosses the legislative finish line, Boatwright will step onto the court not as a stranger, but as a fully initiated brother in the Gilas system. The prospect of rolling out a lineup that could feature the sheer size and shooting of Boatwright seamlessly paired alongside the dynamic defensive anchoring and offensive gravity of a fully healthy Kai Sotto, is quite simply the stuff of dreams for Filipino basketball fans, and the stuff of absolute nightmares for our opponents across the Asian continent. Looking ahead to the third window of the FIBA World Cup 2027 Asian qualifiers this coming July, the narrative has entirely flipped. We will be traveling to hostile territory to face New Zealand on July 4th and Australia on July 7th. These will undoubtedly be incredibly hostile environments. But with the lessons learned from the February window, with players like Quinton Miller-Brown and Juan Gomez de Liano getting vital international reps under their belts, with A.J. Edu continuing his remarkable development, and most importantly, with the promised immediate, forceful return of Kai Sotto to anchor the paint, Gilas Pilipinas will be fielding an entirely different beast. We are no longer just aiming to scrape by. We are aiming to walk into Oceania and steal victories on their home floor. The goal is to secure our definitive spot in the second round of the World Cup qualifiers with authority and send a resounding message to the rest of the world that Philippine basketball has truly arrived on the global stage, armed with the tallest, most skilled, and most deeply prepared lineup in our storied history. Thank you so much for joining me on this extensive, documentary-style deep dive into the latest breaking news surrounding Benny Boatwright and Kai Sotto's immense impact on Gilas Pilipinas. The road to the 2027 FIBA World Cup is long, arduous, and filled with incredible twists and turns. But one thing is absolutely certain. This team is being built the right way, with the right pieces, and the future has never looked brighter.